Hello, welcome to Gardener's World and a very spring-like Longmeadow, where the primroses here in the copse are appearing like jewels, almost by the hour. Joe has been finding out how to make the most of the garden space that you've got, and in his final instalment, he's got suggestions on how to tackle an awkwardly shaped town garden.
The trick is to turn what might be thought of as a weak point to your advantage. And that's exactly what the designer has done here with this difficult triangular plot, turning it into a generously proportioned place of calm.
And we meet a plantswoman who's passionate about experimenting with new plants in her garden.
This one is an umbel I collected in Spain on a mountain probably 10 years ago. It's a Ligusticum lucidum subspecies lucidum, which you don't have to know. Umbel from Spain will do.
It's funny how plants grow in and out of fashion. I remember about 25 years ago, the only dahlia that anybody grew was Bishop of Lambeth. Now, thankfully, lots of us grow a huge range. They've come into fashion. When I was a child, one of my first memories was sieving leaf mould to make compost for chrysanthemums. But how many people grow chrysanthemums now other than those that do so for show? They're just simply fallen out of the repertoire of most gardeners.
Well, I'm going to grow them again here at Longmeadow and hope to harness their range of shape and form and the intensity of colour that they can have as a dramatic addition to the jewel garden.
I think they have an unfair reputation of being difficult plants to grow. They're not really, they just take a bit of care. And after all, that's what gardening's all about. And I've bought some rooted cuttings. Now, I've got these off the internet. You can't get them in garden centres yet, but they're very easy to get from the internet. You can just see they are small plants, grown in a plug, nice strong roots, and they need potting on. I've mixed up a good potting mix, a peat-free potting compost, which I've then added to with sieved leaf mould and garden compost. And if you can't do that, I would suggest buying a John Innes No. 2. And I'm potting them on. And this means that they will grow on into nice, strong young plants. But they need a bit of protection at this time of year. When I've potted these up, I'll put them into the cool greenhouse. Now, a cool greenhouse actually is a technical term. What it means is it's not allowed to drop below 5 degrees. It's not heated up above about 10 degrees. The sun will do that, but it just keeps things above freezing. Obviously, if you don't have a greenhouse with a heater, a windowsill will do, but not above a radiator. They'll get too hot and too dry. Just as long as it's frost-free, that's absolutely fine. And then once they've started to grow, and we see signs of growth, they can then go into a cold frame or a protected place outside, and then gradually they'll grow on and harden off. Right, let's put a label in that, and we can put them in the greenhouse. Who knows? Maybe we'll resurrect a long-neglected but rather glorious plant. Now, I know that chrysanthemums have been out of fashion, and perhaps not many amateur growers have had them in their gardens over the last 20 or 30 years. But that doesn't mean to say that there haven't been a group of passionate chrysanthemum growers. And we went to South Wales to meet a champion amongst them.
I'm Ivan Mace, and I've been growing chrysanthemums for 45 years. I first got interested in chrysanthemums by taking my father to chrysanthemum shows. So bit by bit, I liked them, I got interested in it, and then when we moved in here, we started putting a few greenhouses up and growing them ourselves. These are what we call charm chrysanthemums. There are classes in shows for them, but hardly anybody takes them to shows these days. They're so big and cumbersome. This is a late flowering anemone-scented chrysanthemum. It's called Anderton, but it's annoying me a little bit because it keeps coming about 2 weeks too soon for the shows. Nice blooms, but too early. These are a bit of fun. I like to grow them. I like to see the colour of them. You know, I like to see what I can do with them. But on the other hand, the large exhibition chrysanthemum is what interests me most, and they get the special treatment. One of the things I think that attracted me to growing chrysanthemums was the fact they're not easy. Not this type is not easy. I mean, they're easy to grow in the garden. They get a couple of flowers on them. But when you're competing against somebody else, it's like runners going out jogging, or you're going to run against Mo Farah. You know, if you're going to run against Mo Farah, you got to get fit, haven't you? And you got to really have a go. So when you grow this type of chrysanthemum, you know you're in for a challenge. They're nothing like chrysanthemums you can go and buy in the shop. You'll never see them anywhere, only with a couple of enthusiasts. Like, I expected about 200 people growing them in the UK, but you wouldn't know about them. They grow them in their back gardens, they got their greenhouses like me, and we're a band of fanatics, we are. I mean, I've got 200 in here. If I show 50 of them this year, I think I've done well. This particular one year, this Primrose Jessie Apricot is doing well for me this year. But who knows what'll happen to it next year? It might be poorer or smaller or something like that. And another variety will surprise you. You get a few surprises. Well, I've got a chrysanthemum named after me. Here it is. And the year it came out, I won the Seedling of the Year with it. It's one of the only ones that incurves up quite tight, right up over the top, almost the opposite to me, where he goes from a bald flower to a lovely curly mop of hair. You know, at the moment, it looks a bit like me, doesn't it? A bit thin on top, but believe me, it'll come up there by the time it finishes. You can have bad luck with just when the blooms are developing, you get that searing heat and you scorch the patch there, and really there's nothing for it. All you can do is cut it off like that and get rid of it. I mean, there's a whole year's work gone there now on that. But, you know, sometimes you're full of hope for a bloom and you think, oh, that's a cracking flower. And then all of a sudden you notice a couple of mouldy petals or something around the bottom of it. And you think, oh, no, I can't show that one. And some years you get more of it, and other years you get less of it. The perfect bloom, I would say, would be one that's even all the way round. The petals lay nicely with no lumps or bumps or anything sticking out on it. The colour would be good and strong and intense for the variety, and the petals are fresh right to the bottom tips. You know, that's where you sometimes you go to the national show and you see two exhibits and you think, how are the judges going to tell which one of these are going to be first? This is going to be a difficult job. I've won the Championship of Great Britain 22 times with these, but don't forget, I've been second 15 times. So somebody has beaten me 15 times. Not all the same bloke, different ones. So I know what it's like to come second, and I know what it's like to win, and it's better to win. I can tell you that.
Well, Ivor can relish being a winner again, as last year he added to his trophies, winning Best Exhibit and Best Vase at the National Show.
I love those chrysanthemums. I think they're amazing. I love the way they're so extreme. They look to me like 17th century wigs. This is a corner of the garden which has been more or less neglected for the last 10 years. And I haven't really known what to do with it. But then this winter, I suddenly realised it would work really well as a small garden devoted to wildlife. I thought, well, maybe along the back I could have a border where all the plants were bee-friendly. I could put a pond in here and use the cover that's growing here as a kind of woodland area, which of course would be fantastic for birds. And although it's overgrown, I could clear the nettles, plant into it. We've got hawthorn, there's field maple. I've got an oak tree here. And naturally, I'm following a path which I can make through it. This is in the way, so it probably has to go. And if I put up bat boxes and bird boxes and make bee hotels, in a relatively small space, you can have a lovely garden, great for people, but also somewhere where wildlife can flourish. But the first thing to do is a little bit of cutting back. Now this hazel, which is really exactly where I want the path to go, has been cut fairly recently, and you can see this regrowth. So I'm not going to dig it out, I'm just going to cut it back. The whole thing about this garden is to have as little design as possible and just go with what's there as far as I can. So this is the only bit of intrusion. And talking of design, Joe has been looking at town gardens over the last few weeks and seeing how whatever shape or size they are, they can be used to maximum potential. And this week, he's visiting a garden that's quite large, but a very awkward shape.
Where's the ideal place to start on a garden design? Often we may focus on what we inherit, a large tree or a tricky corner, all the problems rather than the possibilities. The trick is to turn what might be thought of as a weak point to your advantage. And that's exactly what designer Selina Botham has done here with this difficult triangular plot, turning it into a generously proportioned place of calm. Now this garden that we're in is actually a really awkward shape. So what we've got here is 3 key circles that all link together. Now the central area is a lawn, and towards the back, underneath the weeping willow, there's another circle which incorporates a pond and lots of wildlife planting. And then there's a smaller circle over on the other side, which is just a lovely little seating area. So there you go, 1, 2, 3 circles that all link together beautifully. The main path leads round the lawn and to a garden building. That office, what that does actually is lose that strange corner in the garden completely, but also draws the eye, creates a lovely little focal point. Now into this area of the garden, there's a utility area and just a very simple path leading through. And then nearer the house, where I'm sitting right now, there's a patio area. But once you plant it all up, all the way around the outsides, all up the boundaries, these nice generous beds, you lose that awkward shape completely, and that is the layout of this garden. Like any town plot, this garden is surrounded by houses, but that needn't be a problem. You can have privacy from the neighbours whilst also benefiting from their gardens. In this garden, the boundaries are beautifully lost. We've got generous beds and shrubs and trees tearing up and actually borrowing some trees from the garden next door as well. Now, this tricks the eye into not knowing exactly where the boundaries are, so you can't work out what shape this garden is. When it comes to the seating areas and paths, circles are the motif of this garden, and the materials have been chosen to match. It's all very well drawing curves and arcs on a piece of paper, but when it comes to building it, it's a different story. If you use large pieces of paving, then you're going to have lots of cutting to do. You're going to have to cut the curve on the inside and the outside, and also cut them into sections too. But what they've done here is use a granite set. These are about 4 inches square, so they're a small unit, and you can get around a curve really easily, and it gives a nice, neat finish too. The paths all work well with the naturalistic feel of the garden. How's about this for a path? Just simple birch logs cut to shape and laid directly on top of the soil. It's not going to last forever, but as it decays, it creates a perfect habitat for beetles. And once it's gone, you can easily replace it. The planting is arranged almost like an amphitheatre around the lawn. But even with a large central open area, there's plenty of opportunity for variety in the garden. As you move around the garden, the planting changes, and here we've got plenty of silvery leaf plants with a bleached out bench and some light paving, so it's a tonal contrast to everywhere else. And then you dip your head as you come under these silver leaf willow and the eucalyptus, also very light tonally. And I actually quite like the way you have to get underneath them. If there's one feature I could take from this garden and take to my own garden, it would be this. Now, this is a pond in a pot. To actually create a pond is quite difficult. You've got to dig the area out, you've got to line it, and it's quite involved. But this is so simple. It's just a pot with a liner, it's full of water, it's got a few oxygenating plants in the bottom, and a dwarf water lily floating on the top. But the reflective surface is just beautiful. I could stare into this all day. Everything works together in this garden, from the layout to the little finishing touches. This design is super simple. A circle of lawn, lose all the boundaries, and you'd never know you're in an awkward shaped plot. But because the central area is relatively clear, it gives a generous feeling of space, and that's a lovely thing to have in a town garden.
Well, this area isn't awkward. It's pretty much square, but I've got to remove this stump. I won't grind it out. I'll just get a chainsaw and cut it flush to the ground so it can grow back if I want. And I want to make a pond too, not in a pot, but in the ground. There are certain elements that you must have if you want to get maximum wildlife in a garden. You need trees and shrubs for cover, some long grass, and water. So I want to put a pond in here somewhere. It doesn't want to go in too much shade, so therefore not amongst the trees. You need a pond to be half in sun all the time. So basically the south is over there, so it wants to be back towards this end. It can't be against the hedge. So it sort of has to go roughly in this area. Now, when you're working out where a pond is going to go, it's quite a big decision. So use something flexible like a hose pipe or a rope to mark out possible areas. For example, the bigger pond that I made had 4 different positions before it finally found the right place. Well, I think that might work. Now, even if I was completely happy with that, live with it and watch where the sun rises and falls and just see how you feel about it. And then, and only then, dig it out. So this is something that I can evolve over the next few weeks. But here are some jobs that you can do this weekend.
New shoots are appearing on roses, which means it's time to prune them. There's no mystique about this. Remove any damaged or crossing stems, and then cut the weakest growth the hardest. And this will stimulate strong new shoots. Otherwise, just trim each shrub by about 1/3 and leave them to grow. Now is the best time to lift and divide snowdrops, just as they finish flowering. Take a good-sized clump, dig it up, and pull it apart into 2 sections. Replant half of it in the same place, and then distribute the other half in 2 or 3 smaller clumps that will quickly spread. And this is the best way to increase your stock of snowdrops. If you have an established pond, it's time to give it a little bit of a clear out after winter. This should be a gentle operation at this stage, just removing any fallen leaves or duckweed, which you should place on the side of the pond so insects can crawl back into the water. It's really important to watch out for frog spawn and be sure not to disturb it.
Come on, let's go get dry. In you come. Come on. Not raining in here. Of course, the great beauty of having a potting shed is that you can come and get dry and still do some gardening. And last summer, when it was dry and lovely weather too that day, we went to visit Derry Watkins near Bath. Now, Derry is a great plants woman, but I know that she gets a real thrill from trying out new plants, ones that she's never grown before.
Ooh, what do I love about plants? Is there anything I don't love about plants? The color, shape, the fact that they grow. What I can do with them, talking about them. There is no limit. For about 10 years, I only grew vegetables. If you couldn't eat it, I didn't grow it. And then we had 1.5 acres of land after a while, and I didn't want 1.5 acres of vegetables, so I let in a few flowers. Quite quickly, there weren't so many vegetables anymore. The main reason I garden is to grow new plants. I like plants with lots of color. I like tall plants. I love my Amy, but it's really a carrot. Daucus carata, black knight. It's going over now, but it's lovely gray, pink umbels. I find plants all over the world. Wherever I go, I can't possibly stop looking. So I go to nurseries, I go to gardens, I go looking out in the wild, I ask people. This is Amicia zygomeris from Mexico. Fabulous, tall, sturdy stems and these purple bracts. I think it looks like it was designed on the moon. It's such a strange plant. The leaves fold down at night, and then they open during the day. And down here, this amazing red petunia, very rare. It's a species they didn't know existed until 2007. It's an annual, lovely red petunia with star-shaped flowers, very unusual color. It comes true from seed, Petunia exerta. I grow a lot of plants from seed, and especially annuals. I use a lot of annuals and tender plants in the garden. This is one of my favorite annual climbers, Mina lobata, the Spanish flag. You can see why it was called Spanish flag, with all those 3 colors, yellow, orange, and red, all on the same plant. Such an easy climber to give you a blaze of color in late summer. It's just fantastic. It looks like flames are licking up the whole plant. I love it. As soon as I stuck my spade in here and discovered our heavy clay soil, I knew I had to have a gravel garden because my favorite plants are Mediterranean plants and they weren't going to like heavy, sticky, rich, wet clay. I scraped off the topsoil and I poured 8 inches of gravel. We started planting in it and they have loved it. And a lot of my favorite plants grow up here, the eryngiums, the sedums, and they're much, much more likely to survive the winter here because drainage is much more important than temperature. I collect seed from June right through November, no problem at all. You want to go out at least every 3 or 4 days and see what's ripe today. And as soon as they're really ripe, they'll come off when you just touch them. They just fall off into the pot. If I try to get these slightly less ripe ones, they don't want to fall off. When they're ready to drop on the ground, they're ready to grow. Perfect. This one is an umbel I collected on a mountain in Spain probably 10 years ago. It's a Ligusticum lucidum, subspecies lucidum, which you don't have to know. Umbel from Spain will do. And that's what it is. I love them. This is a chance selection. It was just found seeding itself in Bampton in Devon. So it's called Verbena Bampton. It's a form of Verbena officinalis, which is a plant used by the herbalists. The whole plant just shimmers. It catches the light beautifully. If you grew it in soil, it might disappear. You might never see it again, black on black. But against the pale gravel, it is just divine. I adore it. Anything new and different. It just makes the whole thing so much more fun. It's like meeting new people, and Gardening is all about playing. If you're not enjoying being in your garden and fooling around and trying something new, you're not gardening.
It's time to sow tomatoes. Now, I have to say, for the last few years, I've sown and grown all my tomatoes under cover in the greenhouse. And that's because growing them outside has become increasingly tricky because of blight. And I'm not alone in this. Lots of people have written in and emailed to say, actually, they're giving up growing tomatoes because it's just not worth it. They get struck by blight, and the crop, if they do get it, is not worth the space that's being allocated to it. But this year, I thought I'd give it one last go outside and try some new varieties. And I'd like you, or as many of you as possible, to try them with me, and we can compare notes and see how we get on, not just in the way they grow, as with blight, but also, come harvest, how they taste, how they cook. Now, I've got 4 completely new ones, on me at any rate, and the point of each of them is that they are recommended to be particularly blight resistant. So we've got Fandango, we've got one without a name, which is called Experimental Tomato. There's Lizano, and this one is Loseto. Now, the first thing to do, it doesn't matter what variety you're growing, is to sow them. Small seed tray. Use a seed compost, which is fairly low in nutrients. Take the seed. We'll start with Fandango here. And spacing them out as evenly as possible. There on there. And then I'm going to sieve a little bit of compost over the top. And, of course, label them. Blight is a fungus, and it depends upon a combination of high humidity and warmth. So when you're planning to grow these outside, start to prepare a really warm site. The more sun they get, the hotter it is, the less chance of blight. But there's nothing you can do about the rain. I'm going to pop these into the greenhouse. Now, tomatoes do need some heat to germinate, so if you don't have a greenhouse or a heated mat, a windowsill will do fine with a radiator underneath it. That's it for this week, but before I go, thank you very much for all the pictures you sent of your gardens. We'll be showing some of those in a minute, and I'll be back here at Longmeadow at the same time next week. So until then, bye-bye.